What's up, people? This is the Believe in Saints podcast presented by FanDuel. I am Mario Jerez, Spanish play-by-play voice of the Saints, member of the Saints Hall of Fame Media Selection Committee, and a native New Orleanian. She is my co-host, Erin Summers, veteran reporter covering the Saints and the NFL as a whole. Erin, we're almost halfway through July, which makes me happy. We're getting really close to training camp. We're getting a little closer to preseason. So more exciting topics that actually have to do with games coming up on the show, which I'm looking forward to. I'm sure you
Yeah.
are as well. How are you this morning?
I am doing great. I know I've been hitting up some guests and players, asking them to come on, and everyone's on vacation. And I totally get it. It's the only window that we have now between how long the entire NFL season really does last. I mean, it's really pretty much taken over an entire calendar year. So these couple weeks, early July, are like the only time to get out of town. I like tried to get Juwan Johnson, and he said, "I'm on vacation. They took their daughter to Disney World for her birthday." And I was like, dude, we'll talk when you get back. Like, enjoy that time off.
For sure. And I messed with you a little bit last week about being with your girls in Aruba, but seriously, I commend you for still working and doing the show and doing the interview with Phil Simms. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And you're right, man. These are really the doldrums of the off season, more so than like February, March, because in that time, at least you're still recapping the past season. You're seeing where your team could do better next year. Right now, we've already had mini camp. We're just waiting for training camp to have any morsels of anything. And we're close to the games, like I said, but at the same time, we're still kind of far away. So this
Yeah.
is definitely, in my opinion, the toughest part of the offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, we'll get some good action during training camp. There's going to be multiple joint practices. They did come out with a training camp schedule. There's going to be a ton of open practices for the Saints. So fans are going to be able to see them a lot in Metairie. And then at Tulane, they're bringing back that practice there at Yulman Stadium. So that'll be really cool for the fans as well. So there's a lot of fun stuff coming up, actual football action. But of course, it is the football, the NFL. It is a year-long thing, so there's still plenty to talk about, especially when, your starting quarterback goes on a podcast and gets into a ton of topics.
Yes, lots to break down from that. And in future shows, a lot to break down from training camp, Aaron, because I'm
Mm,
looking forward to those joint practices. Like the
yeah.
preseason games, they're going to go hard. It's a game situation, but those joint practices get really intense, and it's always starters versus starters. You see fights break out and stuff like that. So if you're in the area listening to this show, I think getting out to Airline Drive for those joint practices against the Jaguars will definitely be worth it.
Absolutely. And that's where you see the most competitive action during preseason because you don't show all your cards during the games, but you're willing to show a little bit more during the practices, try a couple different things because generally those aren't opponents you're going to see later in the season. So, yeah, there's a lot of good stuff that comes out of those.
Saints report to training camp on July 28th. Until then, plenty to discuss on the show here in Believe in Saints. Aaron, the team's starting to get a lot of hype naturally. Like they're starting to become a trendy pick for a lot of publications,
Mhm.
which scares me a little bit, to be honest with you. But we'll get into that, talk about who's feeling the Saints going into 2026. As Aaron mentioned, Tyler Shough went on the green light with Chris Long, had a lot of interesting things to say. And I'm looking forward to breaking that down, Aaron, because we've
Mhm.
been talking so much about the new additions to the offense, how the Saints will be more explosive. It'll be nice to hear from Tyler Shough and see how he's feeling as the guy that's going to actually be throwing the ball to those
Mhm.
dudes. So we'll get into that. Also, a happy birthday is in order for a Saints legend. And we have another pie in the sky bet from our friends over at FanDuel. The last one had to do with the Saints team success. We talked about the odds of the Saints going to the Super Bowl next year. Today, we're going to talk more individuality. We'll talk about a prop futures bet that has to do with Saints quarterback Tyler Shough. So looking forward to all of that. Should be a great episode here today on Believe in Saints. And to start, I'll give you the floor here, Aaron. I see our friends over at The Athletic, who I don't
Yeah.
think have any reporters specifically covering the Saints, but they do pay attention to the team, obviously. And apparently their staff is high on the Saints offense coming into this season.
Yeah, this was interesting because, as you mentioned, we're just starting to see the national media start to get on the bandwagon a little bit more with the Saints as far as the being in the second year under head coach Kellen Moore, the success that they were able to build with quarterback Tyler Shough, the fact that I think he definitely over exceeded expectations for where he was drafted, what he was able to do towards the end of the season. I think people watching him were more impressed than they thought they were going to be, especially with what he was able to do with what he had on the field.
I was for
So
sure.
they're adding pieces, they've added pieces. So people are starting to say, okay, maybe the Saints might be a little bit better than we anticipated. Going off of last year, in totality, 6-11 isn't a great season. But when you say they won 4 of their last 5 games, you can see the progress, the momentum building, and that's only continued during the offseason. Bolster the offensive line. I mean, the team was 28th in rushing last year, worst red zone touchdown percentage, 29th in pass block win rate. So all of those stats are definitely going to increase when you add the biggest target off on the offensive line during free agency and David Edwards there at left guard. You add Jordan Tyson in the draft, you add Travis Achan in free agency. So you start looking around at the different positions and saying, okay, this team might be able to do something this year, a little bit better than we thought, a little more than we thought. And that's what The Athletic kind of dove into this week is the top 5 offenses or the 5 offenses that they think are going to take a big step forward. And the Saints were one of their selections there. So I think that's really, it bodes well for what the outside media, not just here in New Orleans, the fans are anticipating out of this season. I like that people are having those types of just expectations of the team being better than they were. They said multiple times, the Athletic article said that you look across the board at the positions, they're good. The players are good. They're not elite. But if everything goes to plan and there's healthy players available the entire season, good is definitely going to be better than what we've seen in the past few years.
Well said, Aaron. And that's a really well written article. I think there's a lot of stock to be put into what the Saints put on the field towards the end of last season. And it's
Mhm.
good, like you said, to see some national people agree because yes, the Saints did not play the strongest opponents in terms of win-loss, but I promise you when all those opponents saw the Saints on their schedule before the season, they were probably saying, "Oh, New Orleans, that's an easy
Mhm.
win." So, like I said when we interviewed Phil Simms, I never say wins and losses are a quarterback stat. Like I don't think that's a fair thing to do. But I think there is something to be said for Tyler Shough having a winning record as the starter in his rookie season. And like you've been saying all summer, like it's very different from this point last year. He's going into training camp knowing that he's going to be a starter. And that's very different from last year when
Mhm.
you're having to split reps. It's just a lot more security and, frankly, a lot more consistency in what he's trying to do. And improving the run game, it's not been a secret. Like Kellen Moore doesn't say very much, but he said a lot that was the priority in improving the offense this season. That's his baby. Keep in mind, he
Mhm.
is the offensive play caller, so he's really going to care about that. And some really gross yet interesting stats in this article, like you mentioned, being 28th in rushing success last season for the Saints, and then the red zone things is crazy. Like I
That
knew we
was
were
so
bad, but
frustrating last year. It was,
yeah,
you could get all the way down the field and they just could not punch it in. But it's because they didn't have that elite run game and they just could not. I mean, they tried it with multiple things. Taysom Hill was the guy that they would go to in the red zone and he couldn't get it done. And then they finally let Tyler Shough remain in the game and be the one running in. He actually led the team with 3 rushing touchdowns, which is crazy.
yeah, not good. That's supposed to be Taysom Hill's rushing touchdowns, but he like we said on this show throughout the all season, or at least like I've said, he just was a little washed up last year. I'm sorry, there's no other way to put it. And he's a Saints legend, but if he's not picking up 3rd and 1s, 3rd and 2s, and what real
Mhm.
value is he bringing? And when it comes to the red zone struggles, Aaron, I think that was such a big part of it. Like 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, we were what 0 for 2 or 0 for 3 on tush pushes on the season, and all of them looked horrible, like 4 and
Yeah.
5-year-old Pee Wee players or something like that. So I think the short yardage thing directly correlates to the lack of success in the red zone. The Saints had to be better in short yardage situations. And I don't know if that's running Tyler Shough more, which, like you said, you don't really want to do. I don't know if
Mhm.
that's a guy like Estime getting a bigger role as a better runner between the tackles. But I think short distance, and I don't know if the tush push is going to be a part of it. A lot of success in Philadelphia with that for Kellen Moore, but they need to be better on 3rd and 1s, 4th and 1s to improve all these other stats.
Mhm. I know Tyler Shough has talked about him and head coach Kellen Moore spending a lot of time going through the playbook, rewatching film. And Tyler wasn't involved in as many of these as we saw earlier in the season, but some of those trick plays that they tried to run down in the red zone, like, let's just get the basics down first. Let's
Yeah.
stay ahead of the chains. I don't know. It just seemed like they were trying to do a little bit too much too early last season. So you get down to the nuts and bolts here early, and then you can start to expand the playbook a little bit more. It's no joke. Like, there's no secret that the run game has to improve. And that's, as you mentioned, something that Moore has really put an emphasis on. That is what's going to have this team but more successful than they were last year, and having the success in maintaining the clock and dictating the pace of the game and making sure that they have the ball more than the other team, and all those things where you can be more versatile in your play calling and not force you into obvious pass situations on third down like we saw so many times last year. So I think they can establish that run game. That is really what's going to open things up for this team.
Yeah, I don't know if you caught this interview with Chris Long and Tyler Shough, Aaron, as we get
Mhm.
these sound bites ready, but really good stuff in there, and kind of goes with what we're talking about. He talked about the first game against Atlanta, the game in the Superdome, which was technically Tyler Shough's first start, and
Mhm.
he talked about how frustrating it was, getting so hyped up for that game, it being a rivalry, and the Saints losing at home to Atlanta. And in that game specifically, the Saints actually got some good drives going towards the end of the game, but short distance just killed him. And a couple of unsuccessful Taysom Hill plays, a snap that went over Taysom Hill's head like 20 feet in the air,
Yeah.
and it was just a disaster. But I do encourage you to check out this interview with Chris Long and Tyler Shough. They got into some really interesting stuff. He talked about his wide receivers, Chris Olave and Jordan Tyson. He talked about going on what he called a retreat with his wide
Mhm.
receivers and tight ends to San Diego to have some throwing sessions and have Drew Brees kind of oversee everything. And he also got into some underrated players on the Saints that he's playing with this season. But let's start with his words on Chris Olave. We've talked so much about him, Aaron and I, about this offseason, about maybe he's disrespected by the Saints fan
Mhm.
base.
So immediately when I heard this bite and he says he thinks that Jordan Tyson is a carbon copy of Chris Olave, I was like, but is that what you want? Do you want two receivers that do the exact same things? In my opinion, you don't. Yes, it's great that you can have two interchangeable bodies that know how to do all the same things, can run all of the routes, but I don't think you want two receivers that are exactly the same. You need versatility, whether it is the ability to stretch the field, their bigger bodies, their yards after catch, whether they really do excel in the intermediary game or they can get out long. I mean, I just think you want a 1-2 punch that complements each other and is not exactly the same. And then going to throw it out there, the problem with both of these players being the same is they've both had injury history as well. Jordan Tyson missed 4 games last year. Chris Olave missed the second, half of the seasons, 2 seasons prior. So there has been that aspect of it as well. And I just hope they're not carbon copies in that realm of the game either.
Yeah, honestly, if they both just stay on the field, I think I'm gonna be happy. Like, I think the production's gonna come. I don't know how it's gonna be divvied out between those two guys, but I get what you're saying, Aaron, for sure. But I also think I disagree with you a little bit, just based off of Tyler Shough, Kellen Moore, and everybody's words in drafting uh, Jordan Tyson. They basically talk about him and Chris Olave both, as Tyler Shough said in that soundbite, as being complete wide receivers, like 3-level guys. They can catch the
Mhm.
ball near the line of scrimmage. They can go over the middle and take a lick. Less of those would be nice for Chris Olave, but he's still capable of doing that. And he can get behind your safety and be a blazing speedster down the sideline. So those aren't two guys that you're going to kind of put in a box with their skill set the way you do with the Vele. His name was escaping me.
Mhm.
Devon Vele, who's supposed to be a red zone threat, kind of a possession receiver, or somebody like Barry Brown, who right now is a speedster, like a gadget guy, somebody who can catch the ball in space and do some damage. Kellen Moore, Tyler Shough, this offense, the people running it, seem to think that you could do a little bit of everything with those guys. And while they are kind of similar players in terms of their skill set, it's important for the Saints offense to be a little bit more random, a little bit more unpredictable this season. And if both of those guys stay on the field, Aaron, I promise you good things are going to happen. There may be some growing pains for Jordan Tyson. There may be some feeling out still for Nussmeier and Kellen Moore now with a better offense and better options to give the ball to. But I think both of those guys will complement each other well if, to your point, they can actually stay on the field.
Yeah, I think they will complement each other well, and I think that it does. I understand what you're saying as far as making the defense keep them guessing because you don't necessarily know what you're getting with either of them. They can run all of the routes. Last year, when you had Rashid Shaheed on the field as your number two, you knew kind of what you had to get prepared for, and people were deep in the secondary getting ready for some of those deep balls. But I just wish that we had somebody that was going to be or just was a contested catcher, like elite at that, that's going to win the ball no matter what, because I feel like we don't necessarily have a guy like that. And maybe it is going to be somebody like Devon Bailey with his height, and we're going to see a little bit different side of his game this year with him on the field more. But it's just the contact that has gotten me a little bit worried a little bit about these receivers.
Yeah, and that's a fair concern. And, that's going to dominate the discussion, not just the health of these guys, but the production that the Saints are expecting from them. But they also asked Tyler Shough about some underrated players on the team. And I thought it was interesting, Aaron, both the guys that he named, neither one of them technically a wide receiver. So they asked him, we've been talking a lot about both of these guys on the show, but they asked Tyler Shough about who are the most.
I think it's really interesting that he highlights Juwan Johnson because they do have such a history. They played together at Oregon. It was actually Shuck's first touchdown pass went to Juwan Johnson this past year. They started working out together as soon as Shough became a part of the team. So it's natural that they have a connection. But when you look at Juwan Johnson's body of work, he's only gotten better each year. He switched from a wide receiver to a tight end. I've had multiple conversations with him about having to be that willing blocker and how it's very different. Even though Juwan does look like he's got a big body and he is solid, he said it's really difficult lining up against some of these DNs and trying to hold your own. So he is continually improved and worked on that area of his game. We just need to be able to count on him to bring in some of these balls, because I think that was an area where he dropped a few that were key touchdowns, key plays in games. So if he can kind of figure out that aspect of his game, then absolutely think he'll take a huge leap forward this year.
That is a fair criticism. We all remember the first game against Arizona. I actually had a boo-boo on the broadcast that day. I haven't said publicly, but I thought he caught the ball. I kind of already started saying "toshed," and I didn't see that Buda Baker knocked it out 20 feet into the air. So, but the fact that he had all those drop passes, Aaron, and still put up 77 catches, 889 yards, and like you said, it's kind of improved his yardage total in each of the last 3 seasons. And you bring up a great point about the blocking, because he's a big guy, he's very chiseled, but so much of that is technique pre-snap, understanding where defenses line up and then how to execute the play that you're supposed to do post-snap. So he's come a long way there. And as the Saints started running the ball later on in the season, I made a point on the broadcast to highlight Juwan Johnson, because he sprung a lot of those blocks, and you could tell he's come a really long way since that position change. So he's somebody who's going to be a big X factor for the Saints this season. And then him mentioning Erik McCoy is interesting as well. I don't know if I'd really call him an underrated player, Aaron, at least in terms of the Who Dat Nation. But the same point that you made about Alvin Kamara the other day, his availability, not just last year, but the last 2 seasons, I'll talk about here with Erik McCoy, because coming out of Texas A&M, great center, was the center for them when they beat LSU in that 7 overtime game. I'll never forget that. But after Texas A&M, first 5 seasons in the NFL, he played in 12-plus games. But since 2024, he's only played in 14 games. And that's a big drop in quality depth, in my opinion. Simpkins had some good moments last year. He had some good reps, but it's just a big, big difference in what you can do offensively when Erik McCoy is in versus when he's not in the game. So I thought those were some interesting words from Tyler Shough, and Erik McCoy definitely has to stay on the field this year.
Yeah, we can go back to 2 years ago when he got injured second game into the season, or third game, and the season completely changed for the Saints. They were on a tear. They won the first 2 games, the Panthers, the Cowboys by, what was it, 98 points that they put up in the first 2 games of the season,
Two of
and
the
then
best weeks in my life. That was a lot
insane.
of fun.
I mean, we were going to the Super Bowl, hands down. And then Cowboys weren't what we thought they were going to be throughout the rest of the season, but Erik McCoy gets injured, was it first play, third game of the year, and things went downhill fast. He is so important for this offense. And it's, I think maybe you don't notice it because he's a center and he's not the one out there scoring and making the plays, but very underrated component of this offense and making sure everybody's on the same page, doing what they need to be doing, keying in on what the defense is doing. I mean, he calls the schemes and calls out what the defense is doing. And so yeah, I mean, he's definitely a safety net for a quarterback too. When Tyler Shough is still getting used to the NFL and what he's seeing across the line, to have Erik McCoy keying everything out for him and letting him know is big.
Tyler Shough making a big effort to get acclimated with his teammates on the field. He's also doing the same thing off the field, Aaron. And whenever he's gotten in front of a microphone this summer, he's talked about going to his teammates' houses, how they have
Mhm.
babies at a similar age, how they just have a lot of camaraderie off the field. And we talked about this on a past show. Tyler Shough is taking some of the wide receivers and some of the tight ends for the Saints out to San Diego, and they're going to practice at Drew Brees' training facility. It's unclear if they're going to stay with Drew. Yeah, let me jump in here, Aaron, because I
Yeah.
think it's interesting that he calls it a retreat. Like, not a practice session, not a training session, a retreat. Like, almost like it's spiritual. Like he is really trying to get everything that he can out of Drew Brees, football lessons and otherwise, right? So,
Mhm.
and even if it's just lip service with the quarterback that the Saints have had in the past, I really appreciate Tyler Shough just making an effort. He's showing the fan base that he is trying to improve, and he does care. He does respect Drew Brees, and that's probably a good thing to do. The guy's going in the Hall of Fame in less than a month. So I thought it was interesting that he called it a retreat, Aaron, like almost like he's trying to learn about more than just football on this deal.
Absolutely. And I think telling the players that are coming with you that that's going to be the vibe, that it's going to be more fun, camaraderie. We're going to spend some time on the beach. He talked about throwing the football on the beach and just kind of having fun and enjoying the game and enjoying the knowledge of a Hall of Famer to be very soon is, I think, great. You don't want to tell your teammates, "Hey, we just got out of mini camp, we have a month free, and then we're going into training camp. Let's go grind it out and work hard." They're going to get so much out of it. And I think they're going to get even more out of it if they take that mentality into it. Like, let's just go have fun. Let's enjoy being around each other. Let's enjoy what Drew Brees can bring to our locker room, to the field, what we can glean from him, and come in refreshed and excited when we hit training camp.
Yeah, and refresh is a good word because it's going to be some serious pressure on Tyler Shough. Everybody loves him right now in New Orleans, and they should.
Mhm.
What he did last year, I think, was nothing to sneeze at. But now the book's out. Defensive coordinators have film on you and whatnot, and he just has a lot to prove going into this second season. But there's definitely something different when you compare him and the other guys that we've had taking snaps since Drew Brees retired. Like, none of
Yeah.
them were doing this. None of them were going out to San Diego with Drew and just making that much of an effort, at least not since he left. And if you're really excited about Tyler Shough, you could think about putting a play on FanDuel with these odds that I'm about to talk about here, Aaron. Last week we talked about the Saints potentially going to the Super Bowl and them
Mhm.
being 30-1 to win the NFC. If you're curious about the MVP odds over at FanDuel, right now the top 5 guys with the shortest odds, all quarterbacks, Aaron, not to be expected.
Yeah.
You got Matt Stafford, Joe Burrow, Drake May, Lamar Jackson, following Josh Allen, who is the betting favorite to win the award right now at plus 600. And we talked about the sports books liking Kellen Moore last week. They
Mhm.
don't like Tyler Shough as much. He is at plus 10,000 odds to win NFL MVP. That's 100 to 1. If you bet $1, you'd win $100 if Tyler Shough wins MVP. And for what it's worth, Aaron, only 4 guys in the history of the NFL have done this in their second season. And that would be Dan Marino, who did it in 1984, Kurt Warner, who did it in 1999 with the Rams, Patrick Mahomes, who was technically
Mm.
a second-year player when he did this, but his first year as a starter with the Chiefs in 2018, he won the MVP. And then the very next season, Lamar Jackson with the Ravens won it in 2019. And obviously, a lot would have to go right here, Aaron. And I mean a
Yeah.
lot. But much like the play we talked about last year, I don't think it's impossible. Like they do have some weapons around him. We have seen, it in NFL history. It may have been 40 years ago, but whenever Dan Marino won it in 1984, I don't think too many people were putting bets on this kind of thing. And like I said, it's 100 to 1. So it might be at least worth a sprinkle, $5 to win 500 or something like that. But I just wanted to highlight the sports books high
Yeah.
on Kellen Moore when it comes to these short odds, not as high on Tyler Shough. But hey, crazier things have happened if you want to put a little sprinkle.
Yeah, I mean, there is a path where you can imagine everything going right for this team and then winning. Shoot, I was going through it yesterday. You could get them to 12 wins if
Whew.
everything goes right. But it's the NFL and everything doesn't always go right. So, yes, pie in the sky, you can imagine these things happening. But right now, I think it's still a young team. They're still building. So I think even though they will be improved, much improved off of last season, I don't think we're going to win the NFC. I don't think that Tyler Shough is going to be the MVP. Kellen Moore could potentially be the coach of the year because of the growth that they had from last year to this year. I think that realistic expectations, if everything does go right, is winning the NFC South and getting back to the playoffs. That's my ceiling. I'm sorry. I'm not placing the bet.
No, and I don't expect you to. But my one retort to that, Aaron, would be like if you were trying to identify like the Bengals from a couple of years ago, the Lions from a couple of years ago, if you want to go into the college football realm in 2019 when Joe Burrow won the Heisman, I think his odds were longer than something like that. So there is precedent. If I was going,
There's always somebody that can do it or did do it.
yes. And if I were going to nominate somebody here, maybe I would go with Tyler Shough. But we'll see. I'm gonna put
Yeah.
$1 down. Why not? If he does it, that's $100 for me. So, but in all seriousness, that interview was really interesting. He had
Mhm.
some good stuff to say, and I got to give Chris Long some credit here because I know you watch a lot of these, but not all athletes are good interviewers. Like you can tell
Yeah.
which guys really rely on their producers, lean on them, and put forth very
Mhm.
little effort. Draymond Green, hello. Chris Long Chris Long is not like that. Like he was a very good interviewer, and like I said, we give credit to his show as we play these sound bites. And if you're a Saints fan, you should definitely check out this conversation with Tyler Shough.
Yeah. Oh, I think that it was a great conversation. It's always good to hear from Tyler. He's very open and he breaks down things like he sees them. Really appreciate that. I don't know if you saw the part of the interview where he showed the bruise that he had on his back and his side. And I saw him in the locker room several times last season, and that thing was gnarly. It was so bad. I mean, his entire backside hip area was dark, 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 dark purple. And he played like that for 3 weeks, and he said it is still dark purple. So props to Tyler for playing through some pretty brutal hits and bumps and bruises last year. And hopefully, even though it doesn't look completely healed, it feels a lot better now.
Yeah, he showed some serious toughness, man, battling through the injuries and then throwing to like the 8th, ninth, and 10th wide receivers on the depth chart by the time we
Mhm,
got to the end of the season.
for
But
sure.
have really enjoyed the show today here, Aaron. Before we wrap up, happy birthday is in order to a Saints legend. At the time of this recording, Cam Jordan is celebrating
Mhm.
his 36th, 37th,
37.
his 37th birthday. Oh my goodness. Double-digit sack season last year. Now back with the Saints, which is a good thing. And we've said that, Aaron, but now the players are starting to kind of come in and give their take. Justin Reed talked with Sirius XM earlier this week, and he praised Cam Jordan's
Mhm.
not just his play and production, but just his presence. So it's not just lip service when we say that. The players on the team really value him being back there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody is excited that he's going to be back with the Saints for one more year. I think one more year at least, right? Like, I think this is it, but
Probably.
it's going to be great having him back around.
Yes, it will. So happy birthday to Cam Jordan. Erin, like I said, we're getting closer and closer to training camp. Before we know it, we'll get to the preseason, then the real deal with the games. Any final thoughts before we sign off here today?
No, I mean, we always find a way to talk plenty about the Saints, and we never get through everything. So stick with us. We always are going to find something to break down and talk about when it comes to this team, because there's a lot to be excited about, and we're getting closer and closer to actual football again.
Yep. And you never know when some contract stuff might pop off. That's been a conversation with Alvin Kamara, a potential pay cut. Chris Olave still hasn't gotten paid, which bothers me a little bit, if we're being honest. But like Erin said, plenty to discuss in the coming weeks, in the coming months as we approach the NFL season here on Believe in Saints. As always, thank you for listening. Don't forget to hit subscribe, leave a 5-star rating, and write a review. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. Thank you to everybody for all the interaction on YouTube. You've been awesome. We'll continue to get back to y'all on there and on our other social media channels. For Erin Summers, I am Mario Jerez saying thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. This has been Believe in Saints. Talk to y'all soon. Who dat?